But right now, I am so excited to welcome to the stage one of our keynote presenters from earlier today. We have Elly from Disney. I would love to have you give her the most love ever. So please join me in welcoming Elly.
We've got a packed agenda today. My goal is for you all to walk away with somewhat tactical advice to better manage your cloud forecasts. Every company is different, but if you hear something today that resonates with you, I hope that parts of my story can help you advance your company's forecasting process. Most important thing is to do what's best for your organization. So I'm going to share my experience, some lessons that I've learned the hard way. So let's jump in. All right, as a quick recap, I'm Elly. I lead the Cloud FinOps team under Disney Entertainment and ESPN Technology. We sit in engineering services. You all saw this slide earlier, but I have been working in cloud financials for a while now. Our team is inside engineering services, but my experience is in strategic sourcing and finance. And throughout my entire career, I've been in this space, specifically around forecasting. So really excited to talk about this. I can talk about it all day. All right. Disney is a huge place, so zooming out for a moment to level set where I am in this entire giant organization. So Disney has 3 core businesses. We talked about it this morning, but we've got Disney Entertainment, ESPN, and Disney Experiences. Disney Experiences is that global hub of parks and cruise lines, us engaging with our guests. And then we've got My World. Disney Entertainment and ESPN Technology. So we're the technology function supporting those 2 segments. We're responsible for end-to-end financial management of the technology vendors that are most important for our Disney Entertainment and ESPN business. And of course, Disney Experiences also has a similar footprint. So how do we all work together? We have enterprise sourcing at the top. How this works is I'm in segment, and then enterprise technology coordinates across all 3 segments to meet our strategic goals. Manage the cloud holistically across the entire Disney environment. So to quickly introduce you to some of my friends, Disney is a big place, so it's great when you work with people that you trust, like Elly and Nam here. You may recognize my FinOps counterparts. Nam and Elly represent enterprise. Well, like I said, I'm at the segment level. And by the way, it's very common for people to mix up Elly Whitman and myself. She's Elly, I'm Elly. We are both women in FinOps. I think I love getting mistaken for Elly because she's awesome. I don't know how she feels getting mistaken for me. But we are 2 different people. Our names are just a little similar. But we are constantly collaborating to make sure that my segment is helping the broader TWDC vision, and we're all working toward the same goal. So one last piece of context before I jump in, talk about forecasting, but from today's keynote, we talked about the need to manage massive, complex budgets long-term against profitability goals. We need to start thinking about the long-term vision on how we want to manage all of these costs. So let's jump in, cloud forecasting. I feel like we got to start with the definition. No one says it best than the FinOps Foundation, but quick sanity check for all of us. Cloud forecasting is creating a model of the anticipated future costs and value of cloud systems. The definition goes on to list a few methodologies you can use in that model to accurately forecast. Statistical models, historical spend patterns, plan changes, related metrics. So if this is what you're interested in, you're in the right place. What we're not talking about, this is my little sister. I told her I was presenting on cloud forecasting, and this is how she responded. If this is what you're interested in, you are in the wrong room. Maybe next year I can talk about this. We'll see. All right, so some more terminology to align on before we jump in. Forecast versus budget. I'm going to admit this is something that even I struggle to wrap my head around sometimes. How I think about the forecast is, where are we actually heading? Whereas the budget is, what's the direction we want to take? Think about expectation versus reality. So sometimes you'll see that these words are used interchangeably. That's because sometimes the run rate will match what's planned in the budget. So don't let that trip you up. But there is a key main difference here. The forecast is meant to be what's true, what we're seeing, what's accurate. And often, the budget, on the flip side, has things that are a bit more, I like to say, political or aspirational, whether it's savings targets or we're trying to force a behavior in terms of reducing costs. So it's very important to make sure that we're speaking the same terms. All right. So before you jump in to your forecasts, make sure that you've got a solid foundation first. I think it's really important that we all ground ourselves in our why. Why are we doing this? Why is cloud forecasting important for us right now? You guys heard me talking this morning about burning it all down, but the reason we did that was because we acknowledged that our why was very different. I like this visual from the FinOps Foundation. It's all the different kind of reasons and ways that we forecast. Think about what is top priority for you. What's nice to have? What are things that aren't really pressing for you right now? Is your goal accurately planning for growth? Do you want to use your forecast to make better decisions? Are you trying to just control costs? What is that main goal? Then start with your problems. So prior to this role, I sat in finance. I was in charge of our cost optimization program, and it exposed a lot of challenges and gaps to our processes. When we all came together to try to address and bring down our budget numbers, we found that there was organizational disconnect. Finance, who was creating the numbers, engineering, who was spending it, they didn't talk too much. There was also unclear budget expectations and fragmented cost visibility. A lot of teams had no idea what they were spending in the cloud in the first place. Complex financial forecasting, and overall, just the budget was way too big to manage. So when I looked at all these problems and I thought, well, if I could make a wish, if I had a fairy godmother, and I could wave a magic wand and create my dream forecasting process that addresses all of these problems, what would it look like? So if the left are all of the pain points that we had, the right are the potential solutions. And these are the things that I'm keeping top of mind when I'm thinking about how we're going to forecast moving forward. I want to make sure that while we are working toward accurately forecasting spend, it's addressing all these more FinOps-y challenges for me as well. I highly recommend establishing strong principles for your forecast. What I mean by this is make sure that everyone agrees on what your priorities are. We agree on these, the fact that we are going to collaborate on all of this together. FinOps is everyone's job. Everyone is going to take ownership of their cloud usage. We're going to use one data source of truth. Forecasting is going to be iterative. We're going to be allowed to change things overall because our technology is constantly evolving. And then the last one, which might be my favorite one, is no agendas. I love FinOps because I feel like visibility and transparency is so integral to what we do. And I like to translate that culture and that understanding down to the engineers that I work with, as well as when I partner with finance. I like to put all cards on the table. I like to be upfront when it comes to financial risk. The only way that we can get ahead of these issues is if we're honest to each other. After my keynote this morning, I got a really good question about trust. And I was like, come to my presentation, hear about my principles. Your principles might look different than mine. These are just the ones that I highly recommend. But think about how your organization's culture is working, what you need to move it toward, and create your principles accordingly. But these are a good place to start. I like these. All right, cost and usage visibility. So if you're early in your FinOps journey, the best upfront investment you can make is around visibility. So visibility is providing easy access or real-time, or at least near real-time, cost and usage data. Sounds straightforward. But I think a lot of people in the room know that that is not as easy as it sounds. So knowing what your spend is, that is step one. And there are no shortcuts. Don't jump to forecasting optimization until you're ready to. And I have this graphic. I love this graphic. Cannot stress this enough, that you have to stand up your cost visibility before anything else. Forecasting and optimization will come easily and build upon that better. I have 4 legacy organizations, all of which are in a different spot on this visibility journey. Even though it took some more time, We knew that we wanted to get back to the drawing board and get visibility for all. So don't be afraid to take a step back and think about that. But where's your visibility going to live? All right? So I mentioned earlier, it's not just cloud, it's also software. I spend so much of my time pulling reports from all corners of Disney. And I found that it's hard to have an effective conversation with anyone when you're talking apples and oranges. If like my dashboard says something different from your dashboard. So it was important for me that all personas could work off the same dashboards and reporting. I think we all have seen, engineering, observability-based cost tracking. There's more finance-based tools. We need something that works for FinOps. And this is a rather new ask to vendors. So most of our tooling that we were using before had a serious learning curve. I do not know SQL. I have tried, and I'm learning, but I need to know it like yesterday. And that's been a huge gap for me to trying to pull data and trying to query and find the information that I'm looking for. It takes up time because I have to rely on other folks for it. So when I was thinking about how can we bring everyone into one central solution, I wanted to make sure that we lowered the barriers as much as we possibly could. Could you imagine if your finance team and your engineering team and your leadership and FinOps all agreed on what the monthly spend number was? Wouldn't that be great? So there's some great cost visualization tools out there. I will say we piloted building our own little solution for the time being. This is like an MVP, one dashboard source of truth. So the hardest part about standing up a forecasting process is making sure first everyone's got visibility, right? So we created this dashboard to make sure that engineering could see the same costs that I was seeing. And then we took their actuals information and we plotted it against a forecasted number that I gave them. We're going to talk more about specific forecasts and how you can arrange a forecast to match kind of the layout of your business. But this was the first of its kind, letting our team see side by side how they were trending against a budget. So now for the first time you have a budget. Now we're showing you how you're trending against it. I wanted to make sure we had this before I even start asking about forecasting the future. In this role, it's so easy to jump ahead. It already feels like we're 5 steps behind a lot of the times, but this is something that, again, cannot stress enough. It's worth the investment. So this dashboard provides near real-time data, and the reason we do that is because it lets us address anomalies before they become a $1 million problem. Before the month closes, it's on the invoice, and then there's nothing you can do about something that happens 6 weeks ago. So in addition to just getting people visibility, I also wanted people to have this real quick visibility to be able to make decisions on it. Cool. All right. Something that was implemented by Elly Whitman and Enterprise Technology is this concept of engineering cost. This was huge in terms of cloud financial forecasting. Engineering costs are the usage-based costs from utilizing services that engineers are working on. It's hands-on work, development, load testing, day-to-day utilization of services. There are also credits and adjustments. I come from the finance world. I have gotten so confused seeing how a usage number turns into our financial number and what's the difference, what are the adjustments that's happening. If you're an engineer, none of that stuff matters to you. You have no say in any of that. So let me decouple that information to you, hold you accountable to a forecast that you can control. Let's remove all of that confusing noise out of it and get down to the engineering costs. All right, we're going to talk models. We're going to get a little bit more technical. So first thing, tagging is key. I probably could stand up here and talk for the whole 45 minutes about why you need to tag. You need to tag your resources because everything else, and by the way, tagging is part of visibility, step 1. Once everything is tagged, everything else falls into place. It's telling you what these applications are for, who's running them, who's accountable for it. And then what that lets you do is once you understand, okay, who is driving spend in this account, who is responsible for this team tag, you can then break out spend into more manageable parts. So if you think about your total cloud bill, once you have tags, you can create a hierarchy. You can start creating budgets by organization, budgets by teams, budgets by apps. That's a lot easier to manage than just trying to manage one big giant number. So divide and conquer. It doesn't have to be one ginormous budget. I also recommend mirroring the forecast structure to how you think about your business segments. Our organization, we have a media team, got engineering services, product. Each one of these organizations is driving costs in the cloud, and they want to know what their spend is. So we've created cloud forecasts for each of those delineations. And each of those organizations are responsible for executing against it and letting us know when changes are going to happen. I'm proud to say that at Disney Entertainment and ESPN, every team has a forecast. We went from a world where we were forecasting at a top number. Maybe the top teams had their own forecasts, but we also just had a big bucket of long tail. What we decided was it is much better to have a simple forecast by team than no forecast at all. That is a huge lesson that we learned. Even if it's just a flat line, 1%, it is better than no forecast at all. So every team has a forecast. So how are you going to model that forecast? So this is a visual from the FinOps Foundation, but I like it because it shows the different types of forecasts and the maturity of it all. So you can have a simple forecast, high level, based on history, a trend-based forecast, driver-based forecast. You can apply net new workloads to it. Your ideal forecast model is going to be a combo. It's going to be an aggregation of different models, a handful of simple, a handful of trend-based, a handful of driver-based forecasts. Add the net new workloads on top. So for each of your workloads, once you implement tagging, of course, you can start to look at it that way. How does this behave? Is it driver-driven? Is it something like security firewalls where you just have to stand up a firewall per account, and that's pretty static? Is it something that flexes up and down when everyone logs in to watch the streaming service? But with that said, don't over-engineer your forecast. Definitely start simple and make it more complex as you go. Some workloads are a lot more volatile and spiky than others. And then there are some other use cases, like we're talking about cloud firewall, storage, which is probably more of a linear growth model. So do what's right for you, but I will say it's going to be a combo of things. All right, still getting technical here. So these are the forecast archetypes that I've seen on a regular basis. There are probably more out there. I'm sure your applications run different than mine. But we have demand-driven, where consumption drivers increase usage. We have that concept, but add a buffer to it. Typically, we think about that with our containers. Manually scaled apps, straightforward and easy. Engineer goes in, scales it up. We have lots of seasonal services that have this type of behavior. And then step ladder. This is common in load testing. We're going to go up, up, and up, try to break it, and then go back down. These are all different ways that you can try to model your cloud spend. But again, it's going to depend on the service that you're looking at, and it's going to be a combination. All right, next, modeling assumptions. So your model is only as good as the assumptions that you plug into it. And all of those technical decisions that engineering is making on a daily basis, they're translating to cost. The instance size that they're picking, the family that they're picking, all of these things coordinate to a rate. So when I talk about a bottoms-up model, this is what I mean. On the far right, in the blue, we have the assumptions that I typically work with when creating this bottoms-up model. And these factors, aggregated together, calculate the total cost. At the end of the day, cost is just usage times rate. So how can you break that down to create this bottoms-up build towards your total cost number? What assumptions can you pull out and make part of that calculation? Because once you have all these assumptions, cost is just a math problem. Multiplication, addition, nothing too crazy like that. So then, with these assumptions, you need to work with engineering and product to understand what these things are. How are we going to project compute? What drives it? What instance class are you using so we can figure out what rate it's going to be? These are all things that we need insight from engineering to do, and now that we're being asked tougher questions around cloud forecasting, it's now more important than ever that these assumptions are locked in. Okay, nowadays, we know that FinOps is everyone's job. That's why we're all here. We talked about it this morning with JR. We showed these slides this morning, but as a quick recap, engineering is going to understand the resource allocation and consumption drivers of the services they own better than anyone. This type of information can be used as assumptions in our forecasting model, but start to ask those questions And I come from a finance background. The more that I work with engineering, the more I know they think in usage. They don't think in dollars. So I like this slide because these are the types of questions that we should be asking engineering. Not, hey, do you think your spend is going to go up 5% next month? They don't think like that. It's, how many resources do you plan to have? We have a big live event coming up. What drives your service? Are you expecting an increase? Oh, you're planning to, optimize your storage tiers because you're a storage-heavy service? Tell me more about that. So be really curious and get engineering involved in your conversation. And then FinOps can be that bridge between these groups. And like technology, we need forecasting to work in an iterative way. So I always make sure to let everyone know we're all in this together. This is all our budget. We each have a small piece of the pie that we're responsible for. FinOps here, sitting in the middle, we're here to help. We're here to help and be the middleman. I know a lot of people in FinOps sit in different kind of places in the organization. I was doing FinOpsy work in sourcing and finance. Now I'm officially FinOps. Some folks have a FinOps team in the finance org. I sit in the engineering org. Depending on where you are, I want you to think about how you play a role in this ecosystem. At the end of the day, what is FinOps' goal? In my mind, it's all about that balancing act in terms of trying to find that maximum value between the benefit that we're getting from something and the cost. But just keep that in mind. As someone in engineering services, I think of myself as an advocate for engineers. I have financial background that is rather new to them, but we need to get them up to speed on this new process. It's my job to be that bridge and help get everyone up to speed. I'm their advocate, I'm their partner. All right. So once you're feeling good about all of the work that you've done in your forecast, you've thought about all of the ways that you want to create that bottoms-up model for your organization, how you want to split it up to mirror your organization, take it on a roadshow and see what you learn. When I started going on roadshows to talk about this new process, I realized that I totally misunderstood a lot of things and had to go back to the drawing board. I realized a lot of engineers didn't know what costs they were spending. So when I came back to talk about forecasting, they were saying, Elly, can you tell me what I'm spending first? So start going on your roadshow, but be open to the fact that you're going to get feedback that might make you want to pause. I also think that it's the job of FinOps to try to up-level everyone and help us with that cross-functional terminology. So I had a slide when I was going on my roadshow, and it was annual operating plan, AOP. What does that mean? And we just defined all of those financy terms. What's a reforecast? Why is it named a May forecast if it's more than just the month of May? Like questions like that, things that finance takes for granted but have never been explicitly explained to engineering. I think it's up to FinOps to help bridge that lingo. OpEx, CapEx, don't ask me about that one. That's too hard. Okay. Visibility is also another thing that you can address while you're doing this roadshow. I opened up the dashboards, we onboarded folks into this. They got to look at their costs for the very first time. So you can kill a few birds with one stone with this. This slide here is one that I've shown engineering. I wanted to show them that we have simplified the forecast. It's really daunting to have finance or FinOps show up and start asking you questions. But I wanted to show them the forecast is just 3 easy steps. And I think a lot of us can probably build off of these 3 easy steps. The first one is you want to model your steady state. So you want to model your steady state. For us, we try to correlate spend with our steady state to our drivers. So think subscribers, engagement. Then on top of that is net new workloads. I will admit, net new workloads is trying to price those out. That is one of the biggest challenges of cloud forecasting. If anyone wants to geek out about that later and share ideas, please find me. Because that is one of the biggest challenges of our organization, is trying to predict something that hasn't even been fully thought out yet. We don't know how we're going to architect it. How do you think about that? And then the third and last piece is just anything outside of those other 2. So there's often other work happening out there outside of the broader roadmap initiatives, outside of net new workloads, things like scaling for live events. We like to scale for Super Bowl every year with our Hulu Live product. We also have deprecation, migration of resources, as well as product changes that are happening and moves that are happening. So 3 key things that I ask engineering to give me feedback on. And I found that having these really targeted conversations help your conversation with them too. All right. Okay. Now I get to talk about variance reporting. So once you have your cloud forecasting model, you can start reporting on variance. And this is where it starts to get really fun. I think about myself and my team as a bunch of detectives or investigators. And our clue is in our cost and usage reporting. And so every month we get our metaphorical magnifying glasses out, we identify the variances, and we investigate them and report on them. How do we do that? We've got the bottoms-up model. So we are talking about bottoms-up, moving from right to left. When you want to triage, you go left to right. You work top-down. Once you understand all the components to add up to your total number, you can then pull those apart to figure out when things aren't working, when variance is high, which assumption are we getting wrong? Are we getting the compute wrong or the storage wrong? If it's compute, is it the price that we're assuming, or is it the amount of compute that we assumed? And then peel it back even more. Maybe we got the regional split wrong. Maybe we picked the wrong instance type rate. Again, when you have conversations with engineering about their spend, this is how they think. If you say to them, why did your spend go up? They might not know what to tell you because so many tweaks were made on their application. But if you ask them a question like, did you change something around the regions 2 weeks ago because it got really expensive all of a sudden? You'll get some really helpful responses back. Oh yeah, we were doing some work. We were playing around with that other region, but we're not going to work on it anymore. So really try to understand the math and components that add up to that total cost number. It'll make you better at asking questions and getting the answers that you're looking for to inform your forecast. So while you're at it, while you're being a detective and investigating and reaching out to teams to figure out what assumptions are changing, this directly ties to your forecast. Because the feedback that you're getting through your variance, why your forecast was wrong in the past, you're getting the updated assumptions from your engineering. So there's this really cool loop that happens where you're able to close that loop with engineering. Okay, you guys had a variance. How can we update your assumptions so that it's not a variance anymore? How can we plan that? And that's a really great way for us to address the big applications and the big services that are causing our deltas. And we get to put a report together each month. So I promised this morning that I would show some real tactical things with you all. This is a report that we generate out of the FinOps team. Granted, I anonymized it and created fake team names so that I could show you all. But this is the type of information that we capture and report on. Oh man, I love an informative one-pager. Thank you all for taking pictures. So this is one of my favorite deliverables of my career. And I want to share this framework with you because it's been working for us. Even with all the many reincarnations of the report over the years, it works. These metrics and sections have always been consistent. So what we have here is a report that we send to both finance and engineering. It is speaking toward forecasted amounts. And because we are so involved in the forecast, every team has a forecast, we can speak to how the team's variances are contributing to the broader variance story. So I always include a summary at the top left. Often that summary gets taken and put into finance commentary. So we're always killing a bunch of birds with one stone in the FinOps world. So I'm trying to create a deliverable that a lot of different users can pull information off of to help with their broader processes too. So put a summary together. Like I said, finance likes to use this. On the top right corner, this is how we did. Our forecast versus actuals, the variance to forecast. It's one thing to be under forecast. That's pretty good. That means you're saving money. But I also want us to be accurate. So we also track our variance level as well. Being within 2%, we consider that low. On the right side, we have our top variances table. Each one of these teams, we have in the back of our mind that bottoms-up model for each one of these. So our analysts go in, we try to figure out which assumptions were off. We try to reach out to the teams and try to tell that story with their tickets that they submitted as part of their work, all to tell this big story. So a tip that I like to share with everyone about variance reporting. I hate being the cost police. It's the last thing I ever want to be. And I don't want an engineer to feel like, oh my gosh, here comes Elly, she's going to come yell at me. That is the last thing that I want. And so a little tip that I have for you all when it comes to investigating variances. Don't just investigate the bad variances. In my world, we're trying to be accurate. If we're too high, too low, that's inaccurate. It doesn't necessarily matter which way. So I highly recommend that if you are in a position like me and you need to go out and explain variances, ask people about the saving stories too. So often we see a big cost reduction, and I get to tell that story for an engineering team. Not only does that help our relationship, but it also makes me, not just the cost police. And I get to tell that story here as well. So don't let your reporting turn into just like this wall of shame. Let it also be a place for you to report on the wins, right? Okay. Cool. So before I go, I want to quickly talk about forecasting at scale. I am part of a ginormous organization, hundreds of teams, thousands of applications. We are a lean team. We cannot be everywhere. If we were investigating variances for everyone that spiked a couple percentage points last night, I probably wouldn't have time to present here at FinOps X. So how do you do this at scale? I want to take this chance to shout out Ben Coles from Apple. He gave one of my favorite presentations last year about FinOps at scale. Apple, they have created this engine that centralizes all of their forecasting activities. And in the FinOps world, I'm all about building off of others' ideas. And Ben, I don't know where you are. Thank you. We learned a lot from the foundation that you set at Apple. One of the biggest takeaways that I learned was you need to invest in scalable tooling. Because FinOps, we're lean teams, we can't be everywhere, and the spend is big. So automate your processes where you can, centralize the forecast management activity into one central place. Once you do that, data is power. You can have predictive modeling where your tool or your application is running those scenarios for you using those regression-based models, AI, simple modeling methodologies. And then on top of that, you can apply automated monitoring. We're big into variance analysis, but what do? We've got hundreds and hundreds of teams. We can't go slack everybody every time that they pop a variance. So we want to move into a world where it's more automated, that teams are getting alerted in real time so that they can address the cost anomalies before it's too late, before they blow out their budget. And finally, self-service reporting. This one goes hand in hand with what I was talking about around getting all your personas into one place. My philosophical belief when it comes to this stuff is I want everyone to feel empowered to be curious and find answers in their spend. So when it comes to self-service reporting, I want everyone to be able to have a place that they can go to pull the information they're looking for to make data-driven decisions. They can use that information to inform their forecast. They can use it to identify optimization opportunities. And they don't necessarily need to go through FinOps to do it. I want to make sure that everyone understands that we all have a role to play in FinOps, and in order to do that, we all have to be involved in understanding the data side to it as well. So, all right. Before I go, I'm almost done. Before I go, though, I also want to briefly talk about something that I didn't quite put in the slides, but something that has been a theme, and I want to briefly talk about as well. Everything that we talked about today can apply to software, too. I'm sure you guys might go back and maybe watch this presentation later, but go back and look at the slides and think about how it applies to your software vendors. A lot of these software-based vendors are consumption-based and have the same challenges that we have when it comes to managing cloud. So when you do this, think about hey, okay, I'm doing this for cloud, but my top vendors also have the same challenge. How can I solve this problem holistically? But at the end of the day, the number one thing is that we need to have a forecast that everyone can be held accountable to, and that's the only way that we can manage this profitability story long term. So, all right, folks, that is all I have. Thank you so much.
Great job.
Thanks for watching. Check out more FinOps X 2024 content on our YouTube channel on the 2024 playlist. Support our channel by liking, subscribing, clicking the notification bell, and by leaving comments and questions for our speakers. We appreciate your support.